Today we're going to be replacing the engine oil on this Talbot Express with a U25 engine installed, the 2.5, actually a non-turbo. So we're looking from underneath and we've got the drain plug there and the exhaust. Now I've previously tried to get a spanner on it, but this sump nut's a little chewed, so I'm going to have to do something a little bit more drastic. It don't really like having an adjustable spanner on it, and it slipped and round the nut off, and I would have to guess I'm not the first person to do it. Now I did manage to get a 12-sided socket on it, and that also slipped. So what we've got to do to get a bit more room is drop the exhaust, so it's just these two nuts here to loosen off, and there's another one hiding behind, so there's actually three. So if we look a little closer, you can see we've got one nut locked in place with another, and you'll need a 13mm socket or spanner. A pair would be good just to free them. Do make sure these threads are nice and free, as you don't want to be applying too much force and shearing the bolts. Go carefully is my advice to you. So if I'm making this look easy, that's because I've removed this before and I've put everything in copperies. So I've got one removed, and I've just got a 13mm socket. I'm not applying too much force to them, as I want them to come off in one piece. I don't want to shear that bolt. If we do, we're in big trouble. So take your time, lube everything up well before doing this. And you may be thinking, well, just get a spanner on that nut and no need for it, and I'll show you why it all went wrong for me. So you will have a spring flat washer secured by two 13mm nuts. So we'll hopefully just drop the exhaust a little. Now you can remove this. This is like horseshoe shaped, it comes out. So you can remove it and really give it a good clean up, which is handy. Get these threads nice and clean and lubed up, ready for refitting. So I'm just going to move that out of the way so it doesn't fall on me. So what I found when I got an adjustable spanner initially on is you could only turn it so far, and this piece of, well, the sump, the design of it basically just threw your spanner off when you tried to turn it. That lump of metal there got in the way, so you could only get on a little tiny bit of it, which wasn't secure enough. But I've got a 21mm 6-sided socket I'm going to use. The 12 point actually slipped, so I'd recommend a 6 point. It's a little bit chewed up, so I'm going to have to give that a little tap to encourage it on. We'll position that and go for it. Well, given that my bolt's rounded, I'm going to have a go with the impact gun. So I've got an extension on just to keep everything as straight as possible, and I'm not going to film it. I want to give myself the best chance of getting the oil draining in the catch can. Well, that was incredibly tight. Basically I pushed with both hands on the impact gun just to keep everything driven home. So we'll remove the drain plug now. I think an orangutan may have refitted it after the last oil change. And there she blows. So what I've actually done, the exhaust, that's tied back. I just put a rope around it to the tie rod just to keep it out of the way of the flow of oil. So this is something I've wondered about for some time. You get to a certain stage where the oil's just a fine flow, because we're working outdoors, it's blowing everywhere. You can see it's made a mess there. So what I've done is I've just got a zip tie and I've just bent it into a little hook shape, so the oil's running down that, so we can keep draining it, and I want to get as much of this out as possible. So now I'm going to turn my attention towards the oil filter, which is just behind the engine towards the rear of the vehicle. You can see the diesel tank there on the front of the engine there. So in theory this should just be hand tight and come off. So we'll see if I can manage to extract it. Yeah, I think it's going to be a two-handed job. Two hands, bossed it. So I've been luckier than with the sump plug. So I'll just reposition the catch can. Hopefully it will catch this oil as it comes. Ooh, it's dripping on the drive shaft, and yeah, it's going in after bouncing off the drive shaft. I'm quite glad I put that zip tie on there. Well, I suppose you could just put the sump plug back in, but I want it to keep draining it out. And that's the oil filter removed, and we've just got a little drip just splashing the drive shaft there, so we'll just wipe that off when we've finished. But it is actually going in the catch can, which is great, so we'll leave that be for a while. So that's the oil filter I have removed, and I'm not sure if that's correct for this vehicle as it's quite small, and I'll show you the one I have purchased, which is also a Bosch, a P238, and it's considerably larger than the tiddler of an oil filter which was fitted. It looks a lot more boss. So I did actually cross-reference this with the oil filter that Coastal recommend. So it's looking compatible anyway, just a lot larger. And also the numbers are totally different. Mine's in 355, the small one, and that's 238. I suppose we were correct on a few counts. The first 6 digits were good. So I just quickly had a little trial fit with it being different to the one removed, and all's well. It did actually extract the seal from it. When I unscrewed it, the seal was just stuck up there, so do check that you have got the seal out from the filter you remove, or you'll end up with troubles. So what I do before I refit an oil filter is I'll put it in the box, and just for stability, and I'll refill it with some engine oil, of which we have. Now this is 15W40, it is a semi-synth. Now I did check this out in the book, and it did say 15W40 semi-synth. Strangely enough, Euro Car Parts has got it down as 10W40. I'm not particular, I don't suppose there's much in it, but it's better to have it right than wrong. So I'll fill this up with oil just to save the engine oil pump having to do it a bit later on. I'm not going to go right to the brim, as you tend to spill it when refitting it. But yeah, that's full, and then we get a finger and just put it all round the rubber seal, get that nice and good, and you can see the level's gone down quite a lot there, so we'll top it off before we refit it. So it's not perfectly level, so don't fill it right up to the top, as you'll get dribbles. I think that's just a little dribble from the outer groove, so that's getting towards hand tight, but it's a bit oily, so we'll have a bit of a clean up and then tighten it a little further by hand. And I've put a two-handed effort in, and we've got it about half a turn more than my single left-handed effort. So while the oil continues to drain, I'm going to turn my attention towards this sump drain plug, what's got a little bit of black gunge on it, so it must be magnetic, you know, doing its job, picking up any stray shards of metal in the engine, and you can see it's quite chewed up. I'm responsible for some of that, and I think so's somebody down the line who owned it before me, so I'm really glad I managed to use the impact gun just to gun this one off in one go. The crush washer is absolutely useless, but I have got a replacement. Hopefully this will fit, and there's the part number, but it is actually a different size. It's a little bit shorter, and the replacement is not magnetic like its predecessor. I suppose I could attempt to magnetise it. So using some swan neck pliers around the circumference of the magnet, and it managed to remove with that end nipped in the vise. So I don't see any reason why I can't fit this magnet to the replacement sump plug. Okay, I'll give it a few hours. and we're still draining away. I'll just show you the little zip tie device I made. That's just kept the oil under control for draining. And we've inserted the replacement sump plug and crush washer without issue. So what we'll do, we'll torque that up to 30 Newton meters. That's 22 pound-foot. Feel the crush washer giving, hopefully giving us a good seal. There, that should do it. Now it's that lip there what prevents a ring spanner or anything else going on it. So we'll pour a splash of oil in, and then we'll check the sump plug, and that all's well for leaks. Hopefully there will be none. And that's looking bone dry to me, so we'll take this opportunity to reconnect the exhaust. So I've gave the threads a clean on this bracket and smeared them with lashings of copperies. So that just slots on horseshoe style. And then we can get the pipe in, get that buttoned up. So what we're aiming for is to tighten this nut up enough to compress the spring. And I've just simply got to, just doing this by hand, there's no tool on there. And then we can lock that tension off with the other tool. Keep adjusting the exhaust as well. It's got a flare on, and the other side and its counterpart, and it will locate. You could get it slightly off if you're not careful. So I've been round all three, and what I've done, I've just put a 13mm open-ended spanner on and just nip that up ever so slightly, just to pinch every one of them. So that's all three good. The exhaust pipe's nice and firm to the manifold, and no signs of any leakage. Now this sump plug seems a bit meatier, so it might be possible to get away with a spanner on that in the future. So I've rolled it off the ramps and we're on level ground, and we've got 4 litres of oil in it. So we'll just have a little dip and see where we are. So we're a little bit shy of the mark there. Another room for another couple of litres perhaps. So we've added around another litre, and that's the result. I'm very pleased with that. One thing I will say is, while you're pouring the oil in, you seem to get a reading a lot higher up there. Then you have to wipe it and start again. So you could easily think without wiping, oh, I've put too much in, but you haven't. So it's now time to run the Talbot up and check for leaks. There's no glow plug light on this. That's another job I've yet to do. We clock the mileage there for the benefit of our records. Little flash of the oil pressure light there, not too alarming, all sounding good. So what I want to do is go check for leaks. I'm going to do that off camera. Many thanks for watching, and why not subscribe to learn of more low cost repair solutions.